The sudden announcement this week that a major newspaper had cut its entire photo staff sent shockwaves through journalism circles. It's also a vivid illustration of how quickly the newspaper business is changing. The prestige of winning a Pulitzer Prize couldn't save veteran photojournalist John H. White. He was one of 28 still photographers to get the axe this week when the Chicago Sun-Times eliminated its photo staff.
All of us gone. All of us. In one mass wipeout. In a statement, the Sun-Times said it was refocusing its resources into multimedia and reporter-generated video like this.
A firefighter, it looked like a fire marshal, came on board and then told us that there was a small rail fire.
The push by newspapers into video isn't new. Both the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald have offered online video for several years.
When the FBI raided the apartment, they did find about 15 total identities.
But what is new is the idea that newspapers must fully embrace video to survive, a notion echoed by Boston Herald editor Joe Shaka when he recently showed us their video studio.
We have really accelerated our video efforts because we found that people really want a visual experience on the web.
How to best provide that visual experience is still a work in progress.
A 19-year-old Framingham man today was arraigned on charges of kidnapping and raping a 15-year-old girl last week.
Viewers may find online news readers and commentary less compelling, but many of the field features are as polished as anything found on TV.
Some people say that in my neighborhood it's really bad, but they don't really know the people.
And lest we forget, it was a Boston Globe videographer that captured the defining video of the marathon bombings. On the internet, no one cares that you used to be just a newspaper.
It's, I think, very important to note, we closed talking about a Boston Globe videographer getting that horrible footage. And I think that's the key. You look at what's happening in Chicago, which I hate. If print reporters are trying to get, still shots with their iPhones or to get video as they report, they're not going to be able to do their print reporting as well as they did before, and they're not going to create photos or videos that are good at someone who is dedicated to that particular craft. I have real misgivings about trying to make everyone who reports be a videographer and a photographer and a reporter. It's great, I think, to have organizations like the Globe or the Herald or whoever else branching out into other media. I think that's good. But trying to make everyone do the same thing, I think, will result in a loss for people who read or watch.
I may get into trouble on this one. I want to say my wife is a former news photographer. I have friends who are photographers. My son is a photographer.
I think we should move on to Kara, maybe, with that intro.
No, what I want to say is what I don't like about this is the disingenuousness of it. This isn't about video. This is about whacking your photo staff to save money. Now, that said, if you are facing an existential crisis, and the news business is facing an existential crisis, it's tempting to think that for the most part your reporters are going to be able to come back with usable photos, usable video, even if it's not as good as what you'd get from professional photographers and professional videographers. We're talking about a business that is teetering right on the brink here. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Sun-Times made the wrong decision. I think they made a really unfortunate decision, and I don't like the way they're explaining it. But I kind of understand what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. I mean, cutting between 20 and 30 people was a money decision first and a tech decision, like, oh, we're going to go into these new multimedia areas. That was a far, far distant second. You look at the circulation numbers for the Chicago Sun-Times. They've gone down 8% just in the last year, down to about 185,000 on a weekday circulation basis. They are having trouble. I mean, every year they are seeing a hemorrhaging. And yes, they are seeing more digital subscribers, but you cannot monetize those people nearly as much as you can print. And also, it is not commensurate. So, the digital subscribers may go up 2 or 3% for every 8% they lose. I mean, they've got a serious problem. The other serious problem you have is that when you start really saying, oh, we're going to go into video, you have to compete, unless it's on very local Chicago things, with the New York Times. They have very good video, for example, in their dining and wine section. I mean, you really think the Chicago Tribune is going to be able to compete with the resources that the New York Times throws at video? There's no way. So there's only going to be a very few areas where they could make any headway on video at all. So I really think it's money, first and foremost.
You know, I think absolutely it is. I think that what's behind this was an attempt by the Sun-Times to break the union. They have a contract coming up with the News Press Photographers Association. They had to break that contract. What is overlooked in this, and I'm not sympathetic to it, but they did say we will hire freelance photographers, which means they will cherry pick among those people who are out there and say, you can come back and work for us for these things.
Reduce rates, presumably.
Reduce rates, maybe not, but they may try to have some very good video in some places, but they had to break to survive economically. I think they felt they had to break that contract, and this is like doing surgery with a sledgehammer, but that's what they were doing.
That's exactly right. That's what they were doing, Tom. I have to say, as a juror on the DuPont Columbia Awards, we have a category strictly for newspapers doing video, and when they do it well, it's very, very well done. Half the stuff you see on there is just somebody like that guy in the thing. I saw the fire, they came over and asked us, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I call, a video that does anything to advance the story. But when you have the people who really have the skill set to do it, and yes, the New York Times has great video with Mark Bittman and the Dining and Wine, the rest of their stuff, slap me awake. It's so boring. Get somebody who can do it. So I'm just saying that this is really sad then to see people who have the skills to do this be able to just be kicked to the curb, even though you're saying some of them will come back. I have a John White, one of the chief guys that won the Pulitzer. He's so good. He sells his stuff. I have it hanging on my wall as we speak. That's how good he is. So when you talk about that kind of talent going away, even if maybe they'll access it from a freelance basis, well, it's a sad day.
It pains me as a former print journalist to say this, but I really do think that the old cliche is true, and nothing captures the essence of a story like an unforgettable photo. I'm thinking of the photo that was shot by, I think, John Plumaki, right, from the Boston Globe. That incredibly terrifying, dynamic image right after the Boston Marathon bombings. Print journalists who are pressed into duty with an iPhone are going to be hard pressed to replicate.
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.